Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mack Story.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. So today is a special episode, and it's one I wish I wasn't having to make, but we've lost one of the great high-impact leaders in the world. His name is Bob Chapman. If you're not familiar with Bob, he's currently or was currently the chairman. He's former CEO of Barry-Wehmiller, and out of all the books I've read over the past 18 years, I've been reading every day, Bob is by far the greatest example of the kind of high impact leader that I talk about and write about. He's all the evidence I need to know everything I'm talking about. If you live it, you apply it. It's true. It'll happen. You'll get the results I talk about. I've validated those results myself, not at the level Bob has. Let me tell you about Bob. And today's episode is going to be a little different. I'm digging into my quote file, and I'm going to share. I plan to share 50 of my quotes from Bob Chapman that I have in my quote file. If you know me, you listen very often. You know I'm a daily reader for the past 18 years, and whenever I come across what I call those leadership nuggets, the gold, I put those things in my quote file so I can reference them later, which is what I'm about to do right now with 50 quotes I got from Bob Chapman. But let me just tell you who he is, so when I share about him, it's probably have a greater meaning if you know what kind of company he was leading. And the company he was leading, Barry-Wehmiller, he took it over from his father quite a few years ago. And at that time, it was struggling, about bankrupt, and he took it over, kind of like a dictator in a way. But then he learned how to lead at a high level. And that's what makes Bob Chapman exceptional. Truett Cathy, the CEO of Chick-fil-A, he's right up there with Bob. The difference that I see that allows me, in my opinion, to put Bob at the top instead of Truett Cathy is Truett Cathy, from what I can tell, all the books I've read about him and what I've heard about him and learned about him, he was kind of really a good guy, a good leader, great leader from the beginning, and he was steady the whole time. What's different about Bob is Bob was not that guy in the beginning. He had to actually go through personal transformation to become this leader. And I think anyone who goes through that type of personal transformation, I've been through that transformation. Rhea has. A lot of really, really great leaders have been through that. I believe for you to be a truly transformational leader, you have to know what it means to have transformed yourself or your organization. And that's what I did when I was in lean manufacturing consulting. I was helping organizations transform themselves from management mindset to high impact leadership mindset, also from traditional batch and queue mindset to lean manufacturing mindset, totally different kind of mindset, big time transformation. And during all that process, I realized I needed personal transformation, and I led myself through it. So that's what leads me to that opinion of people who've transformed themselves and led well. On top of that, they got a what I call transformational leadership. They're the highest type of leader. You may have went through my 5 types of leaders course. If you haven't, check out the 5typesofleaders.com. Go through that course. You'll get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. But there's the managerial leader, the relational leader, motivational leader, inspirational leader, and transformational leader. And I would say Truett Cathy is an inspirational leader, was before he passed, but I believe Bob Chapman is a transformational leader. So just let me tell you a little bit about his company. And I don't know how long this episode is going to go. I'm going to try not to talk too much about these quotes. Probably each one of them I could talk a long time about if I wanted to break it down, but some of them I will talk about. Some of them I'm just going to read. But I want to tell you the company he was leading as chairman and former CEO when he passed away. He died on March 19th, 2026. I was on vacation in Florida, and opened up LinkedIn and saw that, man, that was tough because he's a rare one. And he was doing some really good stuff. And he was a great, great example. Still is. That's the thing about high impact transformational leaders is their influence outlives them. And so the organization Barry-Wehmiller, they have over 200 locations in more than 30 countries. They have customers in more than 100 countries. And they're basically, if they haven't reached it yet, they're right on the verge of reaching it, but they're a $4 billion company approximately. They have over 12,000 employees, and I believe they've acquired over the life of the company, seems like I remember 130 or 150 organizations they've acquired, but that's not really the word Bob used. He called it adopting. He would adopt these organizations and bring them into the culture of Barry-Wehmiller. But that's a big company. And it's an industrial type company. It's a blue collar company. A lot of manufacturing. Yes, there's plenty of white collar jobs in a company that's got 12,000 people, but they're supporting a blue collar organization for the most part. And my brand is Blue Collar Leadership. I actually texted a couple of times, or I should say messaged a couple of times with Bob. I never got to meet him, but on LinkedIn, sometimes he would, whenever I would quote him, I always try to give credit. So sometimes I'd quote him in an article or a newsletter or just a post. And he had a kind of like he's got the main, they got the main Bob Chapman profile on LinkedIn, but there was one that was kind of somewhat secretive. You could tell it was him, but it was not all populated. It wasn't like the official. It was the one he used to actually comment and talk to people. I figured that out. And I mean, it had his name on there, but it wasn't the same kind of profile as the other. But anyway, interacted with him a couple of times, but I discovered him while reading Leaders Eat Last from Simon Sinek. I was reading that book, and he started talking about Bob Chapman and being a part of Bob Chapman's organization as far as supporting Bob Chapman and helping him with leadership development and that sort of stuff. And I was like, I got to go read this book and learn about this guy, because he was talking about Bob Chapman. And Bob Chapman's got a book called Everybody Matters. The subtitle is The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family. And again, this guy's the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company with 200 locations, 12,000 employees plus. And he's talking about caring about the people like family. And he literally did it. You can go watch videos. I highly recommend get on YouTube, look for some of Bob Chapman's videos. It won't take you long to figure out this guy was different. And what made him different was his character, the stuff that I talk about, write about all the time. Bob Chapman was the best example I know of this. And it just so happened to be he was an example at the top of a massive company, which made it even that much more extraordinary. So I'm going to dive into these quotes from Bob in my quote file. And I'm just going to read them. And again, I may tell you something about them, but it just depends on what it is. But let's get started. Let me make sure I'm in my right spot here. So here we go. These quotes from Bob Chapman. Do not think of those you lead as being within your span of control, but rather your span of care. Through caring leadership, you have the opportunity to help them realize their potential. Here's another from Bob. You don't need, I love this one. I love this. I love all of Bob Chapman's quotes that I have in my quote file, but I love the book. As I'm holding the book right now as I'm about to read these quotes, but it's like 50% of the book, the pages are folded over. I've got red, the smaller type Post-it notes you use to mark pages, the little skinny ones. I got them all over the place. I got highlights everywhere. I got the top of the pages folded. I got the bottom of the pages folded. I got so much out of that book. I need to read it again, actually. And this right here may inspire me to do it, because I've got a note in the front when I read this book was January 14th, 2016. So it's been 10 years ago. So I've been knowing about Bob for 10 years. I've been talking about him for 10 years. He's been on my radar for 10 years. He's been at the top of the list for 10 years. Somebody else might knock him off one day, but I don't think they could do nothing at best but time. I mean, all the people who say this warm, fuzzy stuff doesn't work, Bob knows. Bob's got the example. He's got a massive example. He ain't buying the junk that people are selling. I ain't buying it either, because when you know, you know. So let's dive back into this. I'm going to be here all day reading quotes, recording this episode. Back to Bob's quote, another one. You don't need a memo from the almighty wizards of corporate to tell you it's okay to do the right thing. A spreadsheet can't show you how to treat people. No executive order is required to allow you to pause each day to have a thoughtful conversation with someone in your organization. Bob talking nothing but truth. Here's another. Leadership education is not reserved for people with titles. We focus on people who want to take the next step in their leadership journey, no matter what their official title or role is. As you can tell, if you've been listening to me a long time, you'll know I've been influenced by Bob Chapman. But not just Bob. Any high-impact leader with a high degree of character knows all these things, says all these things. There's nothing new under the sun. You might have heard that. High-impact principles have been around forever. What's new is the practice of applying these principles. Everybody who does that is unique. They're a unique person and in a unique situation. So when they share a principle's always the same. The story about the principle is going to be different. Another quote from Bob. Business can change the world if it fully embraces the responsibility for the lives entrusted to it. That's part of my motivation, and my mission is to try to get as many leaders who are willing to lead at a high level to embrace responsibility for the lives of the people working in their organization. One more. This is one of my favorites, probably the top of my list. Whenever I think of a quote from Bob Chapman, it's this one right here. And if you follow me long enough, you'll recognize it because I share it often. From time to time, I share it again because it's that good. Here's what he says. We have been paying people for their hands for years when they would have given us their heads and hearts for free if we had just known how to ask. And after Bob went through his transformation, that's what his mission in life was helping people, leaders, learn how to ask for people's heads and hearts, because they'll give it to you for free if you're a leader worth following. Bob knew that. I know that. Every high impact leader knows that. Let's go again. Here we go from Bob. It is not a stretch to say that we are destroying our civilization by allowing organizations to be all about products, processes, and numbers. They need to be about people, purpose, and performance in thoughtful harmony and balance. I'm enjoying going through these quotes myself. I didn't look through them before I started reading them to you on this podcast. I'm popping through them. I just went into my quote file, which is massive. Typed in, find Chapman, and I'm pulling up 50 quotes that I have in there from him. Again, I got way more in the book. I need to go through the book and get all those transferred over into my quote file, because apparently I read that book before I was taking every quote from a book and putting it in my file. Eventually, I started. If I wanted a quote in my file, I didn't highlight the book. I just put it in my file before I turned the page. So books I've read recently, I don't have them marked up and dog-eared and all that stuff. That's why I know this book, the way it's all the pages dog-eared and highlights everywhere, Post-its everywhere. I know I was not putting all those quotes in my file, but these are ones I've got from someplace, sometime that really, really stood out. Let's get back into the Bob Chapman quote. Another one. The sustainable human solution is not to remove from the bottom and add to the top, which are highly subjective judgments anyway. It is to bring everybody up. good stuff. Nothing but the truth. Another quote. The people are just fine. It's our leadership that's lacking. When people perform poorly, most leaders are quick to blame them, perhaps even fire them right away. It takes introspection and humility to admit that might be a consequence of my poor leadership. How about that? Bob Chapman's talking about looking in the mirror, taking responsibility for whatever the team's doing or not doing. High impact leaders are always responsible. And I got to tell you, as I flip through these quotes, they're just in whatever order that they pop up in this file. There's no rhyme or reason to the order of these quotes other than when I'm doing this search in this Word document, this order they popping up in. Another quote from Bob. The greatest gift, the greatest charity we can give back to society is to be truly human leaders who treat the people under our leadership with profound respect and care, and not as objects for our success and wealth. And he's got some good stuff. Here we go. One more. If we treat people with dignity and respect through our leadership model and show that they matter, and they go home feeling good about themselves, they're going to treat their family better because they feel valued themselves. If they treat their spouse better, their children are going to see a loving marriage. And if they see a loving marriage, they have a better chance of having one themselves. Good stuff. There's one thing you already know about Bob. If you never read Bob's books, you've never seen his videos on YouTube, you never heard of him, but you're listening to my podcast, you listen to these quotes, I guarantee you already think that's a leader worth following. I'm following him. I'm following his lead. I'm introducing him to you as a tribute. I'm sharing him with you. It's good stuff. That's the cool thing about leadership principles. If you know them, you know them. They're the same for everybody. Let's keep going. This is a simple one, but it's good. Good enough for me to put in my quote file. I've shared it many times. I usually share it at Mother's Day. Bob says this: our mothers are our source of goodness. And Rhea and I often say women, when it comes to high impact leadership, women have a head start. It's because they got a lot of this stuff naturally. Women do. A lot of times they have to learn to lead with influence because, especially throughout many, many years into the past, women were not in formal authority positions. Even in the home, a lot of times the men dominated. So if women want to get anything done at home or in the workplace, they had to develop influence, which is what leadership is. It's one reason a lot of entry-level people can excel if given an opportunity in leadership roles, because they have to learn to influence. Now, they got to have good character, because if they don't have good character, they're learning to influence, but they're manipulating people, not motivating people. Manipulation is beneficial only for the person doing the manipulating. Motivation is mutual benefit. Another quote from Bob. A recent study found that 88% of all people who work in the U.S. feel they work in an organization that doesn't care about them. 75% are disengaged. Management is the manipulation of others for your success. Leadership is the stewardship of the lives entrusted to you and the profound responsibility for the people in your care. Bob Chapman just dropping gold left and right. That's who Bob was. He was a phenomenal, extremely high impact leader. Back into the quotes. Here we go. From Bob. Everyone wants to contribute. Trust them. Leaders are everywhere. Find them. Some people are on a mission. Celebrate them. Others wish things were different. Listen to them. Everyone matters. Show them. Leadership truth from Bob Chapman. That's some good stuff right there. Remember, he's got a book called Everybody Matters. Highly recommend. Check it out if you want to learn to lead at a high level. You want to see what it looks like inside of a massive multi-billion-dollar organization when somebody applies the principles that I'm always talking about, writing about, and I'm also reading about. He's one of the people that I always use as an example when I hear these people moan, groaning, and whining about, oh, this stuff don't work. This warm, fuzzy stuff doesn't work. It just sounds good, but it won't work. I'm going to tell you what, it won't work for those people because they ain't got the character for it to get the results. But if you got the character, then you maximize it by learning how to lead like this. You're going to have an unbelievable impact in your own life, in your own family, but also in the family of all those people who are on your team. Another quote from Bob. To promote human flourishing, organizations of all kinds and in every sphere of human activity must cease to think of themselves as entities to use people in pursuit of their own self-interested goals. They should see themselves instead as vehicles of service. He's talking about servant leadership. Here's another one. We need to see ourselves as stewards of the lives we have been given an opportunity to lead and influence. One more. I believe the greatest charity is what we could do at work every day to take care of the people entrusted to us. Here's another one I like. Business should not be about elites serving other elites. It should be about giving all of our people ways to develop and express their unique gifts. Every person has such gifts. Great leaders know how to uncover them. And that's exactly what Bob did. He was on a mission to uncover the gifts that the people in his organization had. Another quote, short one. Recognition and celebration are vital aspects of leadership. Another short one. Building trust requires constant, authentic communication. Fact, that's a fact right there. Here we go. It is impossible at any moment in time to push the reset button, to embrace a different way of being and experience dramatic change. I share that one a lot. That's a good one. I remember quoting it in my book, 10 Foundational Elements of Intentional Transformation, How to Become Your Best Self. Because that book is about doing exactly that, pushing the reset button. If you need to push the reset button, check out my book, 10 Foundational Elements of Intentional Transformation. You can preview the first 5 chapters at bluecollarleadership.com/download. If you like the free stuff, order that book, highlight it, mark it up, fold the pages, do all that stuff that people do when they read a good book. Plan on referencing it later. That's why you mark that stuff up if you ain't keeping quote files like me. Another quote from Bob. At Barry-Wehmiller, we don't try to build trust with our people. We try to care for them genuinely, and trust is the result. Barry-Wehmiller, that's like the name Barry, Barry-Wehmiller. That's the name of the company. Bob Chapman was former CEO, and he was chairman at the time he passed, but that's the name of the company. So this is a little bit of an expansion on the one I shared with you earlier about hitting the reset button. But I'm going to go ahead and reread the part that's a duplicate, but I've got a bigger quote here that's got that piece in it. So here we go. The great thing about business is that despite all the history, all the deeply embedded traditional dysfunctional management practices, and all the baggage of unhealthy relationships and corrosive culture, it is possible at any moment in time to push the reset button, to embrace a different way of being, and experience dramatic change. When you get that full quote, you can see Bob Chapman was using that quote that I shared earlier and relating it to cultural transformation. When I just use that tail end part of that quote, when I reference it, I'm referencing it so people can use it for personal transformation, because this is a principle. It applies in both locations. Another quote from Bob. Leaders who don't appreciate lean, he's talking about lean manufacturing. Leaders who don't appreciate lean make the error of casting great visions and getting people excited, but then falling back into command and control management. Lean traditionalists make the error of implementing lean without a compelling vision so that improvements are made, but ultimately undermine a culture rather than galvanizing it. That's a great quote. A lot of people are not familiar with lean. I actually logged over 11,000 hours leading Kaizen teams to help transform their organizations from traditional batch and queue manufacturing to lean manufacturing. Lean is just basically an intentional and methodical implementation of process improvement principles to increase effectiveness and improve efficiency. And you do it when you really do lean the right way. You do it with the people, not to the people. But most people don't even do it. But the ones who dive into it, most of those are doing it to the people, not with the people. Only people who are doing it the right way with the people are high impact leaders who truly care and value the people. And if you know about lean, you may be interested in my book, Blue Collar Kaizen, Leading Lean and Lean Teams, where I talk about actually leading teams of people in a way that generates buy-in and motivates and inspires them to sustain the gains. Once you make an improvement, sustain the gain. They got to be bought in first, and then they got to trust you and want to help you. And in that book, I teach you how to lead teams of people through process improvement in a way that generates buy-in and allows them to want to sustain, or motivates and inspires them to want to sustain the gain. All right, back to the quotes. With sustained, caring leadership and clearly articulated and deeply ingrained values, organizations can develop an immunity to negative change, a dynamic in which only forward movement is possible. That's what most organizations are looking for right there. Forward movement. A lot of them go backwards. Some of them collapse. But what they're seeking is forward movement. Back to the quotes. As a leader, don't judge your success by the common metrics. Judge your success by the way you impact people's lives along your journey. Let's see here. I got a long quote. Let me make sure. Okay, this is the longer one. Quote from Bob. Got a little bit of story in it. It looks like I'm just scanning it real quick. Let's go. Here we go. Companies routinely refer to people as their most important assets. In most cases, what that really means is that they focus on people so that people will produce for them. Most businesses use people to build products and make money. We use our products to build people. We are building an organization and a culture in which people can discover their gifts, grow and thrive. I was once interviewed by a professor of organizational development. After 2 hours, the professor exclaimed, "I have never interviewed a CEO who didn't talk about his company's products." I replied, "We have been talking about our products for 2 hours. It's our people." How about that one? That was some good stuff from Bob. Let's dive in another one. When you pay people fairly and treat them superbly, you can not only compete globally, but also enrich and elevate the lives of everyone the business touches. He goes on to say, as leaders, we have a profound opportunity and responsibility to shape the lives we touch. You can't hide high impact leadership, folks. High impact leadership, it's rare, but when you see it, you know it because you can feel it. And remember, if you read Everybody Matters, you get all the details of how that business was struggling when Bob took it over from his father. But they went through tough times. I remember he didn't have money to make payroll, and they had to stop buying coffee for the coffee machines. And I think they had to just get rid of the coffee machines. Maybe they were renting them or leasing them or whatever. I don't remember the details. Like I said, it's been 10 years since I read it. Need to reread it. But this quote, I know where this quote's coming from because I remember some of the stuff in the book. But here he says, "What could have broken me made me." A couple more quotes. "Leaders always need to act decisively and swiftly, especially in times of crisis." Another, "We measure success by the way we touch the lives of people." How about that for a metric? Here we go again. "Our responsibility as leaders, be it in business, the military, in government, or in education, is to create an environment where people can discover their gifts, develop their gifts, share their gifts, and be recognized and appreciated for doing so, which creates an opportunity for them to have a more meaningful life, a life of purpose in which they feel valued and get a chance to be what they were brought onto this earth to be." Good stuff from beginning to end. Here's another. "Many business leaders think that people should be grateful and happy simply because they have a job. But the stark fact is that the way we treat people at work affects the way they feel and how they treat people in their life. We subject people to our leadership, good and bad, for 40 hours a week. And when they go home, it affects the way they treat others." That was something that was very important to Bob Chapman, was how he and his leadership team made the people who work in Barry-Wehmiller, how he made them feel. And I'm sure they had issues. You know why? People work there. But they were obviously far above most organizations because of Bob's example and his leadership, his personal transformation. Back to the quotes. "Why would anyone consider starting a journey with a 3% success rate? First of all, virtually all organizations embrace lean." He's talking again about lean manufacturing, "solely to improve quality and profitability. Second, people see the tools, but miss the larger opportunity to listen to the people who know how to do it better. Waste elimination alone isn't inspiring. Inspiration comes when people are truly listened to and engaged in the process. Finally, people lack patience and commitment. A journey like this doesn't end in 6 months or a year, but lasts a lifetime." Some more on lean from Bob Chapman. "We changed the name from lean to Living Legacy of Leadership because in the early stages of embracing these powerful leadership ideas, it became clear to us that lean, as widely practiced, was mostly about the numbers and not about people. If the Toyota production processes had been studied and named properly, it would have been called Listen." I always love that quote. He says if the people who studied, what he's really saying is the people who studied Toyota, if they knew a lot about high impact leadership, using my words, instead of calling it lean, they would have called it Listen. And that's exactly right. I had a frontline guy on a forklift stop me out in a plant one day. He pulled up beside me and he said, "Man, I just want to tell you, we used to hate that other consultant to come in here." I said, "Why'd you hate him?" He said, "He just come here and tried to tell us all what to do." I said, "Oh yeah?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "But everybody loves you." I said, "Why you think they love me?" He said, "I don't really know." I said, "Well, the other guy come in and told y'all what to do." I said, "What do you think I do?" He said, "I really don't know." I said, well, lean down here. I'm going to tell you some top secret information. I said, you can't tell anybody. You know, I was hyping him up so he'd be listening good, so it'd stick. He leaned in. I said, you want to know what they pay me to do? He said, yeah, man. I said, they pay me to get them to listen to you. I'm talking about them being the leaders of the company, the top leaders especially, but all the leaders ultimately. I said, they pay me to get them to listen to you. I said, if they ever figure that out, they'll just fire me and start listening to you. But in reality, they wouldn't. That's why they needed me, because they didn't listen to their people. People had all kind of ideas, but the leaders wouldn't listen. High impact leaders, especially lean leaders, lean consultants, and there's not a lot of them. They're just like everybody else. Most of them are managers of people, not leaders of people. Most consultants want to walk in and show everybody how much they know. That ain't what high impact lean leaders do. They do what I did: walk in, build relationships, ask a lot of questions, motivate and inspire the people to come up with answers, to own the process improvements, to buy in and sustain the gains. You got to make it about the people. It's got to be their idea, which means you got to ask a lot of questions. That's why a lot of my books have a lot of chapters in some of the books where I talk about asking questions. Back to another quote from Bob. Lean is not really about waste elimination. Again, he's talking about lean manufacturing, or it could be lean construction. But I know he's in the manufacturing business. But lean is lean no matter what industry you're trying to apply the principles. Principles apply everywhere, just like leadership. Let me start over with his quote. Lean is not really about waste elimination. It's about frustration elimination, removing obstacles that stand in the way of people being their best, that prevent us from having a joyful and meaningful experience. It's not about telling, it's about listening. It's about blending unique knowledge with collective wisdom. When we allow people and their teams to own the process, they can create better outcomes than any senior executive or group of consultants. I agree 100%, because that's exactly what I tried to do, or actually did, as a consultant when I'd go into companies. All they wanted was results. The people who brought me in, that's all they ever want is results. How you go about getting those results is based on your character. Another quote from Bob. An environment lacking in trust fosters defensive, suspicious, insular, and fearful behavior, which depletes organizational energy and destroys creativity. One more. High trust businesses are built on respect and caring, not fear and anxiety. Ain't that the truth? Another quote. Here's the cutting edge of common sense. Organizations should recognize and celebrate the things they want more of. Ain't that right? Common sense take you a long way, folks. But common sense ain't enough to get you there the whole way. You got to have uncommon sense. All this stuff, all these quotes I'm sharing from Bob, agreeing and understanding it, pretty much common sense. Applying it and living it within your life, that requires uncommon sense, a higher level of intellectual capacity to actually do what you know you should be doing, especially as a leader of other people. When you've got authority and you can flex that authority, you can take shortcuts. Another quote from Bob. We can use the power of business to dramatically impact the world in a positive way. And that's what I'm trying to motivate and inspire people to do. Grow and develop your people so that they can have a better life, not just at work, but also at home. When you do that, you're impacting the world in a positive way. Imagine if all leaders did that. It'd be unbelievable. Back to the quotes. We don't do a lot of awareness training. We want people to be intensely impacted by their experience so that it leads to significant behavior change. For that reason, our shortest classes run 3 days, while long classes require an investment of 2 to 3 weeks. We want people to think differently about themselves and about their work. You can't imagine how hard it is to motivate and inspire a leader to invest 1 or 2 hours in people. They so worried about the money. And they got plenty of money most of the time. And a lot of leaders, the money they got, it's not their money, it's corporate money. And they still want to use it to invest into people. But what Bob Chapman was saying right there is their shortest classes run 3 days. Longest classes are 2 to 3 weeks. Most leaders are doing nothing, zero. So when you talk about that, motivating and inspiring a leader to invest 1, 2, 3, 4 hours, bringing someone like Rhea and I in to develop the people, that's a big deal. Doing it at all is a big deal. But Bob Chapman was doing it at a massive level. He wasn't talking about just some time for a few people. It was a regular deal there. They did it all the time. All the people were engaged. And the people eventually became instructors in the Barry-Wehmiller University, I think they called it, where they were teaching other people how to do what they were doing. Back to Bob Chapman's quotes. He says, a question I frequently get after a speech is, what do you do about the people who don't get it? My response is frustrating to some. We don't focus on the people who don't get it. We focus on those who do. Guess who's going to transform the organization? The ones who get it or the ones who don't? It's obvious. Who's going to become the best leaders and the great leaders inside of an organization? The ones who get it or the ones who don't? It's obvious. Back to the quotes. It looks like we got about 8 more to go. We'll wrap this episode up. Words from Bob. We make some of the best industrial machinery in the world, but I will not go to my grave being proud of all the machines we have built. Instead, I will be deeply grateful for all the lives that we touched and uplifted in our journey. The machinery we build is just the economic engine that enables us to touch lives. The flourishing of those lives is our paramount concern. That's a deep, meaningful quote, especially understanding that Bob just passed away recently. And if you know about Chick-fil-A, like I know a lot about Chick-fil-A, they were a client of ours for 3 years, and got to know, I've read a lot of books from the Chick-fil-A folks, and that's the same thing. They say same exact thing. They're not in the chicken business. They're in the people development business. And the chicken they sell is just a machine that supports the development of people. It's the economic engine, so to speak, using Bob Chapman's words. Back to the quotes. Our message is about morality ahead of money, people and purpose ahead of profits, the primacy of human flourishing over all else. Another quote. The most powerful energy in the universe, and thus in human beings and in organization, is caring. Let's see. Another quote. Humans and organizations alike must continue to grow and evolve, or they will perish. A lot of truth in that. Here's another. Leadership is a privilege, and it takes courage to care for the people you have been given the privilege to lead. That's some more leadership truth right there. A lot of leaders don't have the courage to lead at the level they need to be leading at because they don't have the courage to lead themselves well, much less somebody else, a lot of leaders. This is another, I share this quite often. This is a powerful quote, and I got it from Bob. Right here it is on my screen. The world is suffering from leadership malpractice. So many leaders providing a poor example, leading poorly. And a lot of people say, why are there so many bad leaders? It's why, because enough people out there won't step up and become the leader they wish they had. They want everybody else to do it. That's why. If we had enough good, high-impact leaders, all these crappy leaders out there in the world, they wouldn't have a job. So if you don't like poor leaders, weak leaders, insecure leaders, and you're not a formal authority leader, here's some leadership truth for you. You part of the problem. Step up, develop some courage, become the kind of leader you wish you had. That's what's wrong with the world right there. Everybody wants to talk about it. Few people want to do something about it. Do you have the courage to do something about it? Here's another quote from Bob. I just got a couple left here. Our mothers are our first teachers, our first coaches, our first cheerleaders. Another quote about the moms from Bob. Another quote, the greatest act of caring is not talking with somebody, it is listening to somebody. Pretty powerful. So that wraps up this the 50 quotes from Bob Chapman. A little bit longer podcast than normal. But that's how long it took to get through 50 quotes. Maybe you slowed down and added some of these to your quote file if you keep files. I'll just sharing some wisdom with you. I encourage you to go out, check out Everybody Matters. And ultimately, do what I was just talking about a moment ago. Develop the courage to become the leader you wish you had. Instead of moaning and groaning about all the leaders you have now or have had in the past. That ain't going to help you. That ain't going to help anybody else. Grow and develop yourself. You're looking for resources? Go to bluecollarleadership.com. Dive into that. There's a bluecollarleadership.com/implement. Go to that page and you can find out ways to develop yourself and or those people who may be on your team. There's going to be some ways you can do it for free, some low-cost ways. And ultimately, if you want to get serious about it, you can bring us in, and there's links and information there. You bring us in, buy our books, start facilitating high-impact book studies with your team. All that stuff will be on the bluecollarleadership.com/implement page. Hope you found value in this episode, this tribute to Bob Chapman, his legacy. It's my small way of helping him continue his influence after his death. That's what all high-impact leaders strive for. They want to influence the world in a positive way beyond their years here on earth. That's why I write a lot, do podcasts, write a lot of books. I want to make that kind of difference. Hope you do too. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mack Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mack's books, programs, special offers, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.